welcome to the SCI GUYS, the show where we talk about the crazy, weird, and wonderful stories from the science world. I'm Corey, and as always, I'm joined by my co-hosts, Jamp and Luke Cutforth.
I hate science.
Live from Summer in the City! This week, we're talking about invincible piglets and moon bears.
Moon bears?
What?
Invisible...
Yeah.
Is this about...
Please don't spoil it.
The thing about the landing, the lunar landing with tardigrades.
So tardigrades are the hardiest little animals on the planet. They're also the cutest thing that you will never see because they are tiny. And we love to jettison things off into space. And we did it again. We did it again with
just
these.
keep sending things into space for no reason.
And it keeps on failing.
Well, maybe for a reason.
So shall I start off by telling you guys what tardigrades are? Do you guys know what they are?
I know what they look like.
I know what they look like, and I know they're called moon bears.
So tardigrades are little microscopic animals that have 8 legs, and they are so cute. They are called moon bears because they kind of walk like bears. So they live in water. They're about between 0.05 millimeters to 1.2 millimeters, which is like the smallest bit you get on a ruler.
That's actually
that.
bigger than I thought they were.
Yeah, you could see them with the naked eye, surely.
Really?
Not all of them. So some of them are quite small.
The big boys.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. So there are over 900 known species, and the most of them feed by sucking juices from moss, which is why they get called moss bears, moss piglets.
Oh, I didn't know they were called moss piglets.
Yeah, moon bears.
I have an
Every day's a
idea.
learning day.
Water bears are moss piglets.
How do you know that we're not all tardigrades in a giant human meat suit? Aha!
Because
we could be.
We're not.
Have you ever opened up your own brain and looked for tardigrades? You have not.
This is actually a really interesting thing. So we all have everyone in this room, if we're all adults, we've got different numbers of cells in our bodies. I'm sure we can all agree on that, right?
Yes.
Yes.
We don't have to count them. Tardigrades, all adults of the species, have the exact same number of cells.
Wow, that's
Literally.
impressive.
Yeah, so essentially how it works is they've got...
Do you know what that number is?
Yeah, it goes up to 40,000 cells in the biggest ones. And humans, for comparison, have 3.72 times 10 to the 13.
That's trillion.
Oh, that's trillion.
Yeah, it's a lot of cells. So basically the eggs hatch after 14 days, and when the young are born, they already have all of their cells. And so the cells don't divide, they just get bigger.
And none of the cells ever die until the whole thing dies?
Not from what I've read, no.
Wow.
Ooh.
I mean, it would be difficult if you've only got 40,000 cells and you just shed. Well, the thing is, they do shed.
Yeah, I was going to say, what if one divides? Does another one have to just leave?
But then, yeah. I mean,
What? That's so unfair.
they shed, but they always have the same number of cells.
Wow, that's like the world, when someone, a new and upcoming young YouTuber comes along, one of us YouTubers has to just leave.
Yeah, when's your time?
Yeah, my time was a long time ago. I'm just refusing. I'm holding on.
So, basically, they are very special tardigrades. They can survive,
why?
basically. But why?
Why?
Why, you ask? They can survive basically anything you throw at them. They are the hardiest little things. So they've survived all 5 mass extinction events.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been discovered up on Himalayan mountains, in Japanese hot springs, at the bottom of the ocean, and in Antarctica, which are ridiculous extremes.
Yeah.
We can barely survive those, and we have technology.
Have we ever found any down by the geothermal vents at the bottom of the sea?
It says here at the bottom of the ocean.
Cool, then
So I
probably right
assume
then.
so, yeah.
Great.
So they can survive a few minutes at 151 degrees Celsius. Bear in mind that's
Bear in mind.
Bear in mind.
Moon bear in mind.
Water bear in mind. They are called water bears, by the way.
Water bears? I thought they were called moon bears.
We accidentally sent them to the moon. I'll get
Right.
them. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. Right.
So they can also survive 30 years at minus 20 degrees, which
30 years?
30 years.
Blimey.
And a few minutes at negative 272 degrees Celsius.
What? That's
which is 1 Kelvin, which is one above literally
Absolute
the lowest
zero.
temperature you can ever get. They are very, very strong. They're good under pressure. They can survive 12,000 times atmospheric pressure, and some of them can do 6,000 times. Which, okay, to put this in perspective, humans aren't very good at surviving things like this.
No,
so
I don't
you can send a tardigrade into space. We will die after about 15 seconds. You'll go unconscious because you can't breathe.
And then you'll expand.
Yeah, we sent tardigrades up to space, and they'd survive for 10 days.
Wow.
Which is
that why we sent them into space to test if they would survive?
Yeah.
That's evil. That's
Isn't it?
horrible. Imagine if we just picked a human and went, right, you're going
we'll
to
see if
space
you-
with
see
no
if you die or
equipment.
not.
See if you survive.
It's better than the time we sent those frogs into space to see if they could.
That was one of our first episodes where we
Yeah.
talked about us sending frogs into space.
Yeah, to see if they would. If they got space sickness.
That was it.
Yeah.
Space.
We don't know because we don't know if they got space sickness because we never got them back. We just sent them.
And you wonder why I'm a little bit disparaging of science.
So there's a lot of other things. They can be dehydrated. Basically, they could basically remove all of their water and come back as long as you give them a little drop again.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, they can survive up to 1,000 times more radiation than other animals, which
Like cockroaches.
I know I'm just giving stats here, but let me just explain. These things are incredible. You can throw anything at them. They're like, do you know honey badgers?
No.
Yes.
Honey badgers. Well, okay, honey badgers can survive anything. These are microscopic honey badgers. That's what they are.
Can honey badgers survive anything?
You can shoot them with a lot of guns and they'll be fine. And if you grab them by the scruff of the neck, they've got enough skin so that they can kind of turn around and bite your arm. Don't mess with honey badgers; they are terrifying.
I've got a new phobia.
Yeah, you should. So what tardigrades can do is undergo chemobiosis, which essentially means if you put them in a high level of toxins, like alcohol, they'll just stop. They'll stop being affected by it in some way. We don't actually know how. This is the thing. We've not been studying tardigrades for ridiculously long, so we don't know how they do everything that they do.
So they're just super adaptable to literally everything.
Literally everything. Yeah, you can do what you want to them. So like I said, we sent them up to space in 2007, and they survived for 10 days, and we brought them back to Earth, thankfully, and they were rehydrated.
And they came back to life.
68% of them that were protected from the UV radiation of space were revived within 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
So, we sent them out to space, vacuum, no UV radiation, but they came back after 30 minutes.
So even when they die, they can just come back to life.
Well, they don't die. That's the thing.
Well, yeah.
I'll tell you about it.
Do you
in a
know what they
little
do?
sec.
Do they go into like hibernation, like
Super
big bears?
hibernation.
So it is like a little bit like hibernation. If in hibernation you had jelly inside of you that stopped you from dying. I will
I don't think
explain.
jelly does that.
Sure, okay.
In just a little bit. So basically, with humans, if you're in space in a vacuum, the lack of pressure will force the air in your lungs to rush just out of your body. So you won't be able to breathe.
Right.
All the gases that are dissolved in your bodily fluids, like the oxygen in your blood, will come out of being dissolved and essentially boil in the freezing cold. Your eardrums will burst, so will your capillaries, which are the tiny little blood vessels you've got.
We have talked about this before, where like
have,
if
yeah.
you're out in space, the outside of you will kind of freeze, but your insides will boil, which is...
Yeah. So let's say you survive that. Your DNA is going to be ripped up by UV radiation. So you're going to die. What tardigrades do, if there's not enough water, they just become... They go into cryptobiosis, which they basically suspend their metabolism and eject all of the water in their body. And then they've got these really interesting proteins that are called TDPs, which are tardigrade-specific, intrinsically disordered proteins, which sounds very complicated. What do you guys think this
But
those
it's
do?
something just for tardigrades.
It's just for tardigrades. Yeah, we've only found it in those. What do you think those proteins do?
Do they form a little shield?
It's kind of like a little shield.
A little force field.
Yeah, little Captain America shield for the
Little bubble.
tardigrade. Essentially, these proteins, how they work is that there's water. When there's water around, they're kind of jelly-like. They don't have the same structure as normal proteins, because normal proteins in your body have got a very specific structure. And that's what makes you survive. And a lot of diseases are actually caused by misfolding proteins.
I've done
Really?
right. Here's
You
the thing
should-
about
yeah.
folding proteins. I don't know what that is, but there was.
folded my protein correctly.
Okay. That sounds like I'm going to say something really interesting. On the old PlayStation 3, there used to be an app where you could simulate protein folding, and it would go to this giant scientific database for like finding cures for cancer. And your PlayStation 3 did protein folding simulations on a PlayStation for some reason, and then they found they were hoping to find like medical cures. I don't know if anything ever came from it, but isn't
From
that
the
really
PlayStation
weird?
3?
Yeah, from the PlayStation 3. Matt was not this.
Amazing.
Our friend Matt was
Really?
nodding away in the audience.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
Fantastic.
true. Wow.
Okay, so the great thing about this podcast is that I've got these guys here for when I'm explaining something that no one is understanding. So
Well, we're all on different levels of scientific
What do you want us
knowledge.
to understand, Corey?
protein folding. Do you know what it means?
No. If you explain it, I'll
Okay.
explain it in human words.
Okay, good. So you've got your DNA. That's what. That's your genetic code. That's a
Yes.
little code you've got that makes proteins.
Yes.
So proteins are essentially just a string of little amino acids that then, when you put them together, they fold into a specific shape that does something.
Yes.
Do you know how to explain that, Luke?
I think that was pretty self-explanatory.
Everyone got it? Let's have a cheer if you understand.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Let's have a cheer if
wow.
you don't understand.
Let's have a cheer if you're kind of in the middle and you're not really sure what's happening right now.
Let's have a cheer if you didn't cheer. Let's just have a cheer.
So I was talking about TDPs. So like I said, TDPs are proteins that are not like other proteins. They aren't properly ordered when there's water around. They're kind of got a jelly structure.
So is that like they turn into like their constituent parts and then they reassemble when they are safe again?
They're still all connected together.
Right.
It's just not in the right shape.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. But when you remove all the water, they essentially turn into this kind of glass-like structure.
Is it pretty?
It is very pretty. I
Yay.
assume
Do
I
we have
haven't
a
seen it.
picture?
It's tiny, Luke. I've not. Yeah. So they turn into like a kind of glassy mixture. That's called. I've not got the word there. There was a very nice
Brilliant
word.
research.
There was a very lovely word there for it. But I seem to have lost it. Essentially, they. Like I've said, they just lose their water and turn into little glass balls,
Is
which
that like
protects all
crystallizing?
the other. Yeah,
That's
so-
like crystallizing you have when you take like salt water and you allow the water to evaporate, then it turns into little crystals. And depending on the speed of which you allow the water to evaporate, the crystals are smaller or bigger. You probably did that in school, potentially. And here's a fun fact about water crystallization. I don't know if this is accepted science, but it is by a scientist. When you do water crystallization and you say things like, I love you, to the water, it crystallizes in a different shape. Or if you play it like
What?
heavy metal music, it crystallizes. Yeah.
Angry
Yeah,
shape.
but then that's probably just because of the
Because
sound
you
waves
love
going through the water.
No,
surely.
no. It's because you said, I love you to the water,
love you.
Corey.
Okay, I see.
And the water went, I love you too. I'll make a nice, pretty pattern.
No anti-science agenda here, not at all.
I'm going to. This is science. Wait, I'm going to look it up. Water, Chris. You
I'm
get to do a
starting
lot
to
of
see
research.
what the review.
There always comes a point in an episode where Luke decides that actually he's just going to go on his phone and ask Siri to do it for him instead.
I'm typing in water crystals. I love you. Oh, we have a question.
Oh.
Would you like to come up? And say
Yeah,
in
come
the
up,
mic?
come up.
I've done some research for Luke.
Yeah. Right.
Immortal said that water was a blueprint for our reality and that emotional energies and vibrations could change the physical structure of water. Immortal's water crystal experiments consisted of exposing water in glasses to different words, pictures or music and then freezing and examining the aesthetic properties of the resulting crystals with microscopic photography. Immortal made the claim that water exposed to positive speech and thoughts would result in visually, quote-unquote, pleasing crystals being formed when that water was frozen and that negative intention would yield ugly, frozen crystal formations. Now, that's on the ideas section of his Wikipedia. Another hefty section.
Are we going to
Is it going to be criticism?
Scientific criticism.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Go on then.
Commentators have criticised Immortal for insufficient experimental controls and for not sharing enough details of his approach to the scientific community. William A. Tiller, another researcher featured in the documentary What the Bleep Do We Know? It's a great title. States that Immortal's experiments fall short of proof since they do not control for other factors in the supercooling of water. In addition, Immortal has been criticised for designing his experiments in ways that leave them prone to manipulation or human error influencing the findings. And there's a lot of Criticism. But maybe water has emotion.
There's
There's a lot of criticism, but also there's a lot. He is a scientist who did this genuine experiment, and you can choose not to focus on that if you don't want to. But I quite like it. So whatevs. I know that's not scientific. I know that's completely the opposite of science. But at the end of the day, it makes me quite happy, and I quite like that. So I like my nice little love crystals.
This is the
Love
scientific
crystals.
equivalent of telling your mates, "Hey, I can get a basket from the middle of the court," and they're like, "Okay, then show us," and you're like, "No,
Nah.
I don't think it is.
no, I won't."
I know
Can't do it today.
I know that I frequently focus on like these little silly things, but at the end of the day, all I'm trying to do when I kind of talk about this stuff is to remind everyone, as science states as its guiding principle, that we know nothing. And like at the end of the day, if you're trying to rule something out just because it doesn't fit with a current scientific dogma that we have, then you are forgetting about what science is all about. And if you do that, and you do the experiment and you get these crystals, it's your job to explain why that is. And you can say it's because of like shapes of vibration and things like that, which may be true and probably is true. But at the end of the day, that criticism section didn't say it was disproven. It just said some people have criticized it.
But you can't. Asking someone to disprove something is much harder than saying prove something. If I was to say to you, Luke, prove that you don't dress up as a little girl every now and then and prance around singing songs. Disprove that right now.
I would say to you, if you want to believe that, go for it. I don't care.
My point is, you can't really.
So
you can't-
anti-science of
Yeah,
you.
you can't really prove a negative.
Yes, I agree, and that's why I'm aware of the fact that that I am being non-scientific when I talk about these things. All I'm trying to do is that because our society is pretty much entirely based on scientific evidence, and science will have its own set of flaws and its own set of dogmas, and the scientific process is definitely not the structure of reality, and everything we've ever thought is true turned out to be not true and had a better method. At least I'm trying to find something that is positive and exciting rather than, and that's the thing. That's my point, is that I'm just offering an alternative. I'm not ever saying science is bad. I'm just offering an alternative.
That's an anti-scientific dogma, if you ask me. No, I do.
It's a positive one.
I do very much actually agree with Luke on this one, in that any scientist that tells you we know everything, don't listen to them, because they are absolutely wrong. We don't know anything. Like we were talking about Nikola Tesla a few weeks ago. He's a guy that's very good with electricity. He basically invented the radio and a whole bunch of other things. He didn't believe in electrons. He just didn't think they existed. So we don't actually know as much as we think we know.
He worked with electricity as well.
Yeah, tomorrow we could... Yeah, exactly. That was his main thing. Tomorrow we could find out that actually everything we know is entirely wrong. And the whole thing about science is basically just trying to find out more. We've gone off on a tangent again. This happens an awful lot. So the TDPs are jelly, like when you dry them out, they turn into glass, and that glass protects all of the other proteins in their body.
All the important ones.
All the other bits. So all
The ones keeping them alive.
Yeah, all the other things that if you broke them, you'd die, they stop them from breaking. So it is like a little shield. It's like a little suit of armor.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. I was thinking about crystals saying I love you to me.
Okay, look, essentially the glass protects them. You got that?
Yes.
We discovered this basically just by looking at their genes and seeing which ones were being made more. You know, which ones were being more active when you tried to kill them. And we found out that those...
I hate science.
What a great experiment.
It's
So,
just awful,
Obviously, to prove this, we decided to just take out all of those genes and see what happened when we dried them out, and they died.
And they died, yeah.
They died very
I would assume
quickly,
so.
yeah.
What happens when we take away their defense?
They die.
They die.
So if I shoot you and take away this shield that you've got, wonder what happens.
You know, we better hope that nothing bigger than us ever finds us, because we treat little things like absolute crap.
That's every single alien invasion movie. Like,
Yeah, but we
Independence
deserve
Day.
it. We
No, we do.
absolutely deserve it.
it's just an extermination, isn't it? So what we did after that was we decided to be nice, and we took those genes that saved them, and we put them into other animals or into other creatures. Not creatures, organisms. That's the scientific word, isn't it? I studied science.
Things.
We put them into other things. So we put them into yeast and bacteria, and actually it saved those too.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't just work for tardigrades.
Not just for tardigrades, but tardigrades are the only ones that make it.
Interesting.
Is there any plan to put it into people?
No.
Why
there's-
not?
Why not?
We do have plans to put them into crops. Obviously, there's an issue with crops if they're not in the right conditions, if it gets too cold or it gets too dry,
They die
they'll
easily.
die out.
Yeah.
And putting these proteins into certain crops can stop that from happening, which would be really good.
That is really
You know,
cool.
solving world
More
hunger.
dead crops? Less dead crops, rather.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Thanks,
More
science.
food.
Which is more living people. So, like I said,
but to be fair, like we've got a pretty big water problem where people don't have enough water. If we put the gene into the people who don't have water and they got a shield and stayed alive until they were rehydrated, that would be great.
I
know that isn't literally how it would work, but let me dream, Corey. It's not a stupid question in that it would be great if it worked.
I'm going to talk to you guys about why we sent them to space and how we sent them to space. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Do we not just send them up in a rocket?
Yeah, but there was more to it than that.
Okay. We'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
So, not many people have sent things up into space. So I think it was Israel decided to send up a rocket into space with some tardigrades on. So it wasn't just to send the tardigrades up there. They also wanted to take some pictures. In fact, the rocket that they sent up was going to take a nice selfie before it landed on the moon. It was then going to measure magnetic fields and...
there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
They weren't just sending it up to take a selfie.
Okay, it was part of it was to take a selfie.
Mostly the selfie.
And then some other pictures as well. And then to measure magnetic fields. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know why they were measuring magnetic fields. I do know why they're measuring magnetic fields.
Yeah, that's the next point.
It's actually the next paragraph. It's to understand how the geology and the geography of the moon work, so that we can get better maps of the moon to figure out how it formed. Which, now that I think about it, actually isn't very interesting at all. We want to make maps of the moon, so we're sending up rockets. Okay.
So, hang on, no. I know that usually my job is to criticize science, but finding out how the moon is formed is actually quite interesting. It might not be important, but it's interesting.
What use to you is a map of the moon, Luke?
Depends
when are you going to...
Depends if I go to the moon. I've got plenty of life left.
Lots of technology.
I might get Elon Musk to send me to the moon. You never know.
I'm sure that's going to happen at some point soon.
I mean, we're about to go to Mars.
When I go to the moon, Corey, I'm going to call you and take a little selfie. And
how are you going to call me if you can't speak to me on the moon because there's no...
I reckon by the time traveling to the moon is cheap enough for me to afford it, there'll be a phone network on the moon.
It's going to be really cheap for you to afford.
We haven't even got a phone network on the tube yet.
Huh?
We haven't even got a phone network on the tube yet.
Yeah, you can call underground. How are you going to call from the moon?
But there are
the moon isn't underground, to be fair.
There are satellites in the sky, and there isn't phone network underground. It's just a different problem. It's like how we've explored more of space than we have of the sea, because the sea seems really easy to do, but actually it's really difficult because it's really heavy and really dark. Ha! I win.
I was very worried you were about to make a joke about me and my weight there, but I'm glad you didn't. Look, let's move on. So Israel had the first privately funded mission to the moon, and they did a very good job in crashing it into the moon because
that was the thing. They crashed it into the moon. They didn't land it.
Yeah, no, they didn't land it. So not many people have actually been able to do a soft landing on the moon, which is when you land without crashing.
Why is that?
Because calling it a crash doesn't sound as good as calling it a hard landing.
No. Why haven't they been able to do a soft landing?
Not one.
I don't know. It's hard. Look, landing on the moon is hard, Luke.
But they've done a soft landing on Mars.
Yeah, I don't know. It's different.
What? There's less gravity. It's closer.
It's more time to slow down.
There's not actually less gravity, Luke. That's not how it works. I'm not going to explain how it works. I'm going to
look up Mars versus the moon gravitational force.
Oh, the gravitational field strength is less on the moon, but there's not less gravity.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so as I said, the Israeli spacecraft, it's called Bereshit. I do this thing where I don't read names before.
Where is it?
Bereshit.
Bereshit.
I never read a name out beforehand, and I always do this when we're recording.
What a bad name for a
I don't know how to pronounce
spacecraft.
anything. So Bereshit attempted to do a soft touchdown, but then had some technical problems when it was...
And crashed.
Yeah, it crashed.
Yeah, it crashed.
So, as I said, only 4 places have managed to do it. That's the Soviet Union, which doesn't exist anymore, the US, and... Oh, that's not 4. It's 3. Soviet Union, the US, and China. I count the Soviet
Science
Union as
podcast,
2.
so we can't count to 3.
Well, the Soviet Union is 2 now. It's Russia and Ukraine. So you got it right. Well done.
I am so smart. I'm so smart. I didn't even know it. So the Soviet Union, US, and China have all achieved soft lunar landings, except for the US, who actually faked it. Don't at me. In space terms, the moon is really, really close to Earth. Like, it's pretty much as close as you can get without being on Earth.
That's not true. There are satellites that are closer. Sorry,
but it's-
that's not true.
There's Earth's
Okay,
orbit.
go and land on a bloody satellite then, look.
But you can land on the International Space Station. That's closer.
I don't agree with that. So
Why is it me who's bringing the facts this week?
So
because I'm
anti-science.
unprepared. So this is the thing. I discovered this news story 2 days ago, and I decided to change the topic entirely last minute. We were going to be talking about I don't even know, levitating frogs or something.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Nobel Prize in levitating frogs.
Yeah, you're going to get that in a couple of weeks.
Cool.
But I decided to change it to this because it was topical. They launched on the 22nd of February from Cape Canaveral, I hope that's how you pronounce it, in Florida, and it spent weeks trying to get to the moon. So usually when you go to the moon, it only takes a couple of days, but this one took a lot longer.
Weeks.
Yeah, so
Where did it go?
it went to the moon, but
What took it so long?
it took quite a few weeks. So it only got into lunar orbit on the 4th of April. So essentially, they wanted to save some money, so they decided to do kind of a space carpool. So they set up the rocket.
I'm
with,
sorry.
Yeah.
Was
so they
James Corden in there?
I'm leaving.
You better know that one day there's going to be a carpool karaoke to the moon.
Gotta be.
Probably.
Let's hope that they keep James Corden on the moon because I'm kind of tired of him at this point.
Oh, it's very popular to hate James Corden. I think he's very cuddly.
He's very
He
lovely.
went to America and got very full of himself.
I think you're just repeating other people's opinions there, Corey.
Yeah.
You don't know him. I'm sure he's lovely.
So the average distance to the moon is about 380,000 kilometers, or 240,000 miles. So they traveled more than 15 times this distance. I say it was
They.
a rocket ship. There was no people on the rocket ship. Don't worry.
The Tardigrades.
Okay, the Tardigrades traveled more than 15 times that distance because they wanted to cut down on spending so much money. So they basically sent the rocket up with some other things, like a satellite, and just had it go the long way around. It just got increasing orbits around the Earth until the moon caught it, and it just went more slowly and slowly circling into the moon.
Ah.
That is really clever.
Yeah, it's a
That
really
is
cheap way to do it. Like,
That's so cool.
rather than having a rocket like directly
Go straight to the moon.
Yeah, you just kind of like, I'm just going to
Just
take
wait
the
for the
long
orbit
way
to
around.
fling you over to the moon.
It is just brilliant the way we have the ability to calculate so specifically that you can use other planets as slingshots to fire your stuff into deep space. It's just so clever.
But not specifically enough to land on the moon. So we kind of need to work on something.
It did crash.
It did crash, yeah. So the spacecraft was built in Britain, which is obviously why it worked so well.
Not a good one for Britain.
Yeah.
Okay, Brexit. Wow.
So it was built in Buckinghamshire, and that's what kind of got it on the way to the moon and was supposed to soften its landing.
Two people from
Sorry.
Buckinghamshire just looked at each other really proudly as if they
Is there actually anyone from Buckinghamshire in the audience? Go give a woo. Great.
Well done for building a
we go.
bad spaceship.
You did a terrible job, you two.
Them specifically.
So the spacecraft was about 1.5 meters tall.
That's about how. No, I'm taller than that.
Yeah, we're all taller than that.
Okay.
That might be your height.
I'm
not all
close.
of us.
This is a lovely quote I've got. It's from Rob Westcott, who is the senior propulsion engineer. He said, "We've never used an engine in this kind of application before," which is probably why it went so wrong. So the big challenge was essentially that the engine had to be switched on for the descent, and then it was going to get too hot.
Did they not turn it on?
So they had to switch it off again.
My phone does that sometimes, where it goes too hot. I need a rest.
Yeah, so they switched on the engine and they had to switch it off again after a little bit, just to so it didn't overheat, and then switch it back on to slow the descent some more. That didn't work
we
out
know
very
that
well.
didn't work
The
out.
landing process took about 20 minutes.
The crashing process.
Crashing process.
Okay, the crashing process took 20 minutes, and the thing is that this was completely autonomous. It wasn't controlled by people from ground control. What they did was they just uploaded all of the controls and calculations into the rocket and had it do it itself.
Badly.
Very badly.
Look, we know they failed. You don't need to keep on mentioning it every single time.
That's interesting though, because obviously when you're going to for example Mars, you have to have an autonomous landing because there's 15 minutes for any signal to get to Mars. But the moon's a second, isn't it, or less? So why could they not land it remotely?
I don't think it's that they couldn't land it remotely. It might have been cheaper just to upload
okay.
it rather than to try and
Sure.
get the signals being sent back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my assumption. It's essentially doing this is kind of like if you were to do it like in Mars, like Luke said, it's a 15-minute delay. That's kind of like trying to.
It's a bit late.
Yeah.
By that point.
It's like watching. It's like calling your friend while you're watching them on a video on like a live stream, and they're blindfolded and getting them to like bake a cake. It's not gonna go well. It's like there's a massive delay and you can't do it properly.
Well, already when you call someone, there's always a delay when you ask a question. So imagine that being like 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
You ask a question, you wait 15 minutes for a response.
Exactly. So. Yeah, so they sent the rocket up essentially with all of the controls and all of the calculations on it, and then it crashed anyway. However, tardigrades are actually quite good at surviving. So this happened.
Crashed didn't matter?
Yeah, this happened back in April. So now we might have accidentally infested the moon with tardigrades.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yes.
So they were meant to just go up there, and now they've just like exploded out onto the moon, and they survive everything. So
Yeah.
they're going to just
Allegedly.
be infesting the moon now.
Might be a bit dehydrated.
Yeah, but we can send them up a bottle of water.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It takes 30 minutes to come back to life.
Yeah. So what they've said was that because they can survive anything, they won't have really been bothered by the heat too much of the crash. They won't have been bothered too much about the cold of the moon.
Or the radiation of the sun.
Or the radiation of the sun. So they're just sitting there waiting for someone to pick them up and bring them back to Earth. So essentially what we could do is go up there and bring them...
Scoop them back up and
scoop them up and bring them back down.
bring them home.
But,
We're not though, are we? It's like the frogs. We're just going to leave them there.
No, I think it's like the Martian.
Well, if we
where-
start a moon base, we can go and get them and take them inside the base and see how they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, we could.
Which they are.
could.
They're going to have a moon base. I think Trump wants a moon base, doesn't he?
Of course he wants a moon base.
Donald Trump wants a lot of things that he's not going to get. As soon as he builds his wall, I will give him his moon base. And then he's going to build a wall on the moon to keep out the Martians.
Didn't he go up on the wall? Just a wall all the way around the Earth.
He could build
Orbiting the Earth.
He could build a tiny wall to keep out the tardigrades. Like a little 1 millimeter wall.
1 millimeter high.
Stay away, tardigrades.
This is an issue. We've spoken about this before a little bit, about kind of littering in space. So this is kind of the worst
Yeah,
kind
they've
of
just
littering
had one,
in space.
haven't they? They've just had an Indian satellite that India wanted to get rid of, and they blew it up or something. And it's like 50 giant, like big, chunky pieces of space debris
What?
now, just orbiting the Earth.
I think a chunky piece of space debris is probably a bit better than a tiny bit.
That's true, because you can see it coming.
That is actually true. If you've got a tiny bit of space, so think about how fast something is moving in orbit. I don't have the actual numbers. But
Quite quick,
It's
I'd
pretty
imagine.
quick. Essentially,
quick.
when you're in orbit, what you're doing is you're falling towards the Earth, but then missing the Earth and just kind of getting stuck in a loop around, right? So you're moving
Yes.
really fast. So if you've got something up there and something else is in orbit and it hits you, it's like being hit by a bullet.
Like the fastest
The
bullet.
fastest bullet you can
Ever.
imagine. So you're not allowed to like litter in space, or you'll kill everyone that ever tries to go
You're
up
not
there.
allowed to, but everyone has.
Yeah, everyone does. It's like
Yeah.
normal littering, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
And they
what
want
we-
to send up like nets and
Out of
stuff to
sight,
catch
out
it
of
all, don't
mind.
they?
And then we'll just get net stuck in space. What's the point?
The ocean's all over again.
We should do what Futurama did and just put it all into the sun,
Shoot it into the sun.
which is actually really difficult to do. You can't shoot things into the sun.
Because they burn up before they get
Well,
there.
that, and also it's really difficult to aim things to the sun. Any like guidance system you've got will be fried before it gets near it, essentially. And also
Interesting.
there's a lot of solar radiation which will mess with anything you send up there. Don't try and send things into the sun.
Lovely.
It's not very easy.
I don't plan on it.
What we've done actually though is worse than space littering. It's like littering with animals. So James is from Australia.
I am.
Now, what happened in Australia not too long ago, quite a while ago, with some bullfrogs, or not bullfrogs, with some
bullfrogs?
cane toads.
Oh, was this the...
Oh.
Yeah, you could go for
Oh.
it.
Yeah.
So this is in Western Australia where I'm from originally. The bad side. It's not near Sydney. So a bunch of cane toads, which aren't indigenous to Australia, got loose, and then they started breeding like mad. Well, as far as I know, I was very young when this happened. Started breeding like mad, and then suddenly there were cane toads all over Western Australia that were like, pretty sure they were destroying crops and other types
Yeah,
of
so
things, and they're very poisonous as well. So
I think
very
it was
venomous.
sugarcane, wasn't it? Was it?
Sugar
Does anyone know that it
Yeah.
wasn't sugarcane?
Sugarcane.
So it was. Yeah, that's right. There were. So they had a lot of pests that were
Yeah.
destroying the crops. So they thought, here's a bright idea. Why don't we bring in some toads that will eat these pests? And then the toads
And then they didn't.
so they've basically destroyed the environment, which is why Australia has such strict laws about not bringing other animals in. And one that's closer to home, there's a few animals that aren't actually indigenous to the UK. rabbits were brought over.
And
That happened in
grey squirrels.
Grey
as well.
squirrels. So this is I
That
don't-
also happened in Western Australia as well. We actually have a fence in Western Australia. We have a fence going all the way from the top to the bottom of the state, which is like it's about a 16-hour drive from top to bottom. There's a fence going the whole way to keep rabbits out of the state.
Would they not just chew
That's
through
true.
the fence?
It's called the rabbit-proof fence.
Can they not
Australia's
dig
got a lot
under
of
the
weird
fence?
relationships with animals.
Can they not dig under the fence? They're rabbits.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes,
well
they
done,
can.
Australia.
Australia's not very good at dealing with animals. I'm going to Google. I can't Google this because I don't have any internet.
I'm
but
pretty sure they can also hop over the fence.
it's not a very tall fence.
It's
then.
not very tall.
So Australia's got a very poor history with animals. They had a war with emus.
And we lost.
They lost.
We lost.
Yeah. So essentially, they tried to do a cull of the emus.
Yeah, they fought.
But they
fought
couldn't.
back.
They had rifles. They had automatic weapons, and they still
Yes.
didn't manage to beat some
The
flightless
emus,
birds.
the emus won.
I'm pretty sure there were casualties on the human side as well.
Yes, more than the emus, I think.
Yeah. No, that's why the emus won.
Yes.
So yeah, like I was saying, in the UK we've got that. So we've got grey squirrels in the UK, which we brought in, and they are much better at surviving than red squirrels, which is why you don't see red squirrels at all.
When I was growing up in Hitchin in Hertfordshire, we had red squirrels. We're one of the few places left to have red squirrels, and my mum was like the biggest red squirrel fan. And she'd like run out in the garden and like,
Is
Is that why you're ginger?
that's why I'm ginger. Yes, my mother bred with a red squirrel and had me. My father does not know. We've got another question, Corey.
Accidentally distributed on the moon.
This is going to descend into a Q&A, but I'm quite excited about it.
How would your father not know about your mother if your father is the squirrel, unless something happened that was totally illegal?
Very good question.
You know what? You'll have to ask my mother that question. I don't know. Maybe my dad just doesn't pay attention to anything.
Squirrels have very poor memories. I think that squirrels have got quite good memories. They can remember where they buried nuts.
Yeah, but that's the only thing they can remember.
That's what
They remember nothing else.
they kind of have to.
They starve.
Yeah, they starve if they don't.
We were talking about
What were we
tardigrades, weren't
talking about?
I went on that little spiel because what's happened essentially is we've now infested the moon with creatures that can survive pretty much anything. Yeah. Okay. So now they are in a state of kind of suspended animation right now. But if we ever get the moon just a little bit wet.
Oh, they're coming back.
And just a little bit covered with moss, these guys are going to take over. It's like a Doctor Who episode waiting to happen.
That would be the greatest war of all time, wouldn't it?
The Australians
Don't send the
against
Australians because they'll lose.
All too often we talk about something and I'm like, can we have someone that listens that might be a sci-fi writer just to base a story on this?
Yes.
Because I would love it. Australians versus
I would if I could write.
water bears. Yeah, well. We damaged the pristine environment of the moon, and there's the Outer Space Treaty, which says you're not allowed to do that. So Israel have accidentally violated that. So have we got another question? No, we'll take it. We'll take it.
Yeah, go for it.
Would you say tardigrades are the Superman cell?
I would say that tardigrades are, a Superman cell, but maybe a Deadpool cell. Do you guys know Deadpool?
Deadpool.
Yeah, Deadpool's cool now, isn't he? Yeah.
Thank you, Marvel.
You can do what you want to Deadpool, and you can do what you want to Superman, and they'll just keep bouncing back. So yeah, I mean, yeah, tardigrades are tardigrades are a Superman cell. Does anyone have any questions? I think we've got
Back onto the topic of like crystals. Didn't they do an experiment where they spoke to flowers and then they like grew better because people were nice to the flowers?
I think I have heard of that.
I don't know if that is true. I think that would be lovely. And like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Let's go and be nice to some flowers. Like, get over yourselves and go be nice to a tree. Hug a tree once in a while. But if that's true, then that's fascinating. That's really interesting. Like, that would be one that is like much closer to if you're talking to crystals. If you're nice to a flower and it grows better, then there's something wrong with your theory, because your theory definitely doesn't incorporate being nice to flowers.
I think it's just be nice to flowers
We should
anyway.
research that and we could do it as an episode.
That's the next episode. Okay. Oh, we've got a question down the back.
The being nice to flowers thing is because you're breathing out carbon dioxide.
That's boring.
There we go. No, it's because you're being nice.
But that's why.
Okay, sure. Well, I've just Googled being nice to flowers.
Stop. Thank you all for listening. You can find the full references for this episode in the description. Subscribe for new episodes every Monday, and why not leave a nice wee review? Find and contact us at SCI GUYS Pod on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Or you can send us an email at sciguys@gmail.com. You can follow me at NotCorey everywhere.
You can follow me at Jamkin everywhere.
You can follow me back to my merch table and buy all my merch. No, you can follow me at you can follow me at Luke Cupboard everywhere.
Okay, that's the show. Thank you guys. Goodbye.
Goodbye.